We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. We've got a guest that we've had on before, Kristen, lovely young woman who has some great insights to a lot of things. Kristen, welcome. And I want you to tell people who you are, because I think a lot of people got the fact that you used to produce Real Housewife shows, but there's much more to what you're doing now and your transition in your life and such. So please tell us about what you're doing, and I think it'll give people a interesting perspective as we go on with this conversation.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me back. And hello to everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I found Rational Boomer before the election. There was a woman who had stitched Arlene Unfiltered,
Right.
and I saw her videos. It was before Arlene had a YouTube channel. And then you had Arlene on your podcast, and that was the first time I saw you. So it was after I had watched a few, and I tried to find this woman's YouTube and I can't find her. But anyway, it was before Arlene had her own channel and she was stitching Arlene's TikToks here to YouTube. So that's how I became a fan of the show. And I was very inspired by Old Soul. When I
Yeah.
saw her on the show, I just was in complete awe of the woman that she is and the work that she does. And there was a group of healers, and I do holistic healing, and I'm a Reiki master. There was a group of healers in swing states specifically, some women that I knew that were doing healing circles for Harris Walls. And because of Old Soul, I felt inspired to volunteer. And I was astonished by the misinformation in women's groups on the right and how they had been brainwashed by Fox News, Ohan, and were believing just like the most outrageous of the conspiracy theories. So that was why I reached out to you, was because I wanted to talk about what we were doing behind the scenes in the swing states. And then my first appearance on the show was the day after the election. I had not slept. I had been crying all night long. I emailed you that morning and I was like, I'm devastated. I've been crying all night, but I'm coming on the show. So yeah, so I grew up in a very conservative household right outside of Washington, D.C. So I grew up in a super political family that was, big Reagan supporters. So I am what would be like the oldest millennial or the youngest Gen Xer. Gen Xers feel like my older brothers and sisters, and millennials feel like my younger brothers and sisters.
I
So I
got you.
think there's, yeah, this subgroup that we're calling Zillennials that are sort of in the middle of those two. And I was a television producer for many years and I just got burned out. But I've always had the political, especially when it came to women's rights. Women's rights was always very important to me, and I never resonated with the Reaganomics or conservative household that I grew up in. And when we lost the election, um, it took time for me to bounce back from it. It's been devastating. And one thing that I really needed to lean on was what I practice what you preach, right? Is that no matter what's going on in your circumstances, you still have control over your life. We create our own reality. And I think moving forward into the next administration, part of their tactic will be to break us down. And one of the things I want to talk about on the show and just remind everybody is that we don't let narcissists, we don't let people like Donald Trump steal our joy. And it's going to be really important that we remember that we can live our best life regardless of whether or not he's a terrible president and all the horrible things that we know he's going to do. We can still live our best life, but we need to choose that and decide that we're going to do that.
Now, when you say you're a healer, Reiki healer, and you talk about we kind of create our own reality. A lot of people are going to say, well, that's woo woo stuff. And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily believe that. And that's understandable. But I want to tell folks something as old and as crusty as I might look. That's kind of one thing I learned too. I don't know about healing and all that stuff, but I did learn. People always ask me, how come you're not upset? How come you're not crying? How come you're not worried? How come you have no anxiety? And I literally have no anxiety because I figured out through the process of living a long life that what I think, what I say, and what I believe is really what I'm going to get. So that's I don't think of the past, and I am not worried about the future. I just take things in the moment and react at that moment. And I think that's the easiest way to deal with things instead of worrying about what might be. People are most concerned about the unknown. Well, the unknown, how can we worry about the unknown if we don't know? And if we do worry about the unknown, we waste a lot of time if we were wrong. So let's just fucking push forward and deal with things as they come. So as much as some of you might think that Kristen is doing this woo woo stuff and I'm not sure about it, I can tell you at least some of that I do. And it makes my life a lot easier, a lot less stress, and it's a lot more fun when you're not putting all this pressure on yourself.
I've lived both ways. So I've been a negative Nelly, right? And I've also worked to cultivate, I would not toxic positivity. We're not just everything rainbows and sunshine, but not allowing outside circumstances to dictate how I feel. Right. So I can choose my happiness every morning. That's a choice every day. I can choose that. Or I can choose to be miserable every day.
Right.
And there is actually a lot of scientific evidence about the power of positive thinking, about how affirmations can start to actually change how you feel and shift your life. So when I got really burned out, so when I was a television producer, I worked like 80 hours a week. So I was really burned out after being on the road filming shows for several years. I worked on Dance Moms, The Real Housewives, and I worked on this one daytime show where we were filming charities. It actually won an Emmy. And we were in like 22 different cities in like 30 weeks. It was something insane. And so I was so burned out that um, I had to go on some type of healing journey or some sort of self love, nurturing myself to build myself back up. And so, from my own experience, is how I embarked on this road. And what's interesting is just recently, I had some opportunities to go back into producing. And so we'll see where that, leads to. But I have an open mind and I'm open to new experiences and open to new opportunities. And so thus I create them, like being on the show here with you tonight, this new
Absolutely.
opportunity I have producing. And and if you've had a narcissist in your life, you will understand this. They will steal your joy if you let them. And Donald Trump is a narcissist, and the majority of the people that he surrounds himself with are narcissists. They have some sort of personality disorder. And a lot of MAGA are some sort of personality disorder. And what I've noticed is a lot of narcissists actually worship other narcissists, right? So the
Yeah,
MAGA
true.
following are narcissists and they actually look up to other narcissists. And while I believe we all, can, find common ground, we are all Americans, and I always like look for the positivity. One thing that I do want people to understand is if someone is in that cult, you cannot help them. There is nothing you can do for them. They have to have their own moment of epiphany, their own moment of reckoning to realize
Right.
they've been conned. And I think we will start to see that. He already has said, oh, sorry, we can't bring down grocery prices, right? And all these people, I can't tell you how many people told me he's going to bring down grocery prices. I literally had this conversation with my neighbor over the summer. He was like, oh, don't worry. After the first of the year, when he gets him back in office, all the prices will go down. I said to him, no, they're not. No, no. So, in some ways, I think we're going to see people have that epiphany now because a lot of things that he promised are not going to happen. And there will be more and more people waking up out of, the cultish type mentality they're in. At least I hope to see that. I'm seeing it online. I definitely have seen it online. So you would think the MAGA crowd would be really excited about their win, and they're not. It's really weird.
It is weird. And I wanted to talk to you about that. First of all, I want to say this is a very important thing to talk about as far as I'm concerned, because as a people, as reasonable minded people going through Donald Trump's first 4 years, this election period, and upcoming this next 4 years, I feel like we are essentially collectively like abused kids. We've suffered through trauma. The election was traumatic for a lot of people. And I know this because I get people coming to my page all the time, really weeping and crying and looking for some kind of hope that I can give them. And because I'm one of those people that always believe there's hope one way or another, because just because you run into a roadblock doesn't mean it's over. And the way I know that is because I've had many trials, tribulations, roadblocks, disasters, and I thought it was the end. Thought it would never be able to come back. Yet here I sit at 64 years old, doing just fine. So we will all do fine, regardless of how bad people think it is. But what you have to understand, I'm trying to tell this to people who don't know about dealing with a narcissist. There's two things a narcissist wants you to do. It's either worship him or be terrified of him. So if you're sitting here as a Democrat, terrified of Donald Trump, you're doing exactly what he wants. That's why we've got to flip the page and get aggressive and get assertive and be tough and push back. Because if we give him what he wants, he's just going to run roughshod.
You're absolutely right. And I'm so glad that you are trauma informed and that you understand narcissism, because a lot of people don't. And I was naive to it, prior to him coming into office, and we've quickly gotten an education about it. I was traumatized after the election as well. I had to heal myself, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come on the show, is to let everybody know it's okay if you need to take a mental health break. It's okay if you need to focus on you and your family over the holidays, but it's what we can't be is just completely apathetic. We want to, of course, take care of our
Right.
mental health. And yes, we are completely traumatized. Hearing his voice traumatizes me. And for any sexual assault survivors, he is so utterly traumatizing. And so many of my clients are in that category of a powerful man who sexually abused them, who was a sexual predator. I mean, he is an admitted sexual predator out of his own mouth. That is
Right.
traumatizing enough. And I don't think that as a society, as Americans, we've collectively processed or even healed from COVID. We just sort of kept moved right along. And, so many of us lost loved ones. And, you know, we we very well could be facing another pandemic. I don't mean to scare anyone, but I'm in California, and it is here in California, and I is it Texas that it's in a woman now. It's a person has gotten it, so it's moved out of the state of California. But this is something that we need to be aware of, is that he botched a pandemic response first time around, and we could be actually looking at another one here with the bird flu. So, um, like I said, we don't want to be scared. We don't want to give him our power, but we do need to still stay informed. And so I have done a complete media blackout since the election. I will not watch any media. The way they have just kowtowed to him makes me just infuriated. So I get my news from Reuters, from The Guardian, from BBC, and I mostly read it rather than being bombarded with the videos, because as a television producer, I know how things can be edited and you don't really know what you're watching. I literally said to a Hollywood producer yesterday, we can edit it to look like anything we want it to look like. I literally
Right.
said it because we can, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
Whatever footage we have, we can edit it to make it look like whatever we want. I did get a glimpse of Trump the other day, and uh, I meant to mention this to you. He is even more cognitively impaired now than he was at election time. He was, his vocabulary, his demeanor is even more diminished than it was just in November. It was astonishing because I haven't been watching him. But when I just saw him on, um, I think it was a press conference he was giving, I'm like, this is really frightening. I mean, he's senile. That's the best word I could describe for how he seemed.
Yeah, absolutely. He does seem cognitively diminished, but I have to say, based on what I've seen him over the years, he's also not a very smart man. He's not as smart as he claims to be, and that's typical of narcissists. I'm the best. I'm the toughest. I'm the strongest. I'm the sexiest.
Yeah.
This is what they all do. You know, you mentioned about the Trumplifucks, the people who worship Donald Trump, and you were surprised by the response, and I have too. You know, it's interesting when I do lives on TikTok or I get emails and that sort of thing. We Prior to the election, I always got people saying Trump 2024 and you're just I love libtard tears and all this stuff. And I expected that. I don't really care. But it seems to me that after the election, it's even ramped up more, the people who are ready to fight with Democrats. And I always ask them, I said, listen, you won the fucking election. Go make America great again. Why do you want to argue with us? What's there to argue about? You won. Now show us what you've got. And I find it interesting. And I kind of sense that these people, even though they don't know it, they've been traumatized too. And they're trying to cover it up with the bullshit and the bluster. And all they know how to do is fight. It's just a weird situation.
Their joy is, owning the libs. And it's so weird. It really is. And it's so twisted and it's hard for us to wrap our head around. They're not even interested in their own interest, right? It's
Yeah.
like they're more interested in owning the libs than making sure their grandmother has insulin that she can afford. They're,
Right.
and the response has been very odd. And that's why I'm saying you have to have discernment to know. And that's what I learned by doing the Indivisible work. The group that I was working with was a part of Indivisible and doing this grassroots advocacy and awareness. We lost the disinformation war. And that's why
Absolutely.
podcasts like yours are so important and voices like yours, because sanity did not rule the day. And Democrats were really bad about getting on TV and talking about facts. And all the channels just ran away with disinformation and played his lies over and over again. And that was what we were working on the grassroots level in these Zoom calls, was trying to work through this disinformation. And that's what I'm saying. If you've got a relative that's entrenched in that disinformation, there's nothing you can do. You have to use your discernment to see if they're really in it. There's no middle ground to find with them. But there still is community that has to be built, because what we're facing in his administration is going to need community. And so that's what I'm saying is we want to find like-minded people. We want to support each other. And we want to find people that maybe weren't engaged in the political process and that are still open to, to us talking to them about what the realities of what we're going to be facing if indeed this administration follows through on what they've been saying. And where we can hit them is in the pocketbook. So I talked about this the last time I was here, about the abomination of all of the corporations that gave Trump money, especially the women-centric corporations,
Right.
companies that specifically, like Tampax and Soma Bras, two companies that specifically make products for women, that gave all of their money to Donald Trump in terms of donations. I have a list today that I want to share of companies that gave money to the Harris Walls campaign, and also some companies gave to both, but I also will share the companies that gave more to Harris Walls than to Trump, because I feel like it's important that we know who these companies
Absolutely.
are. Yeah. Because this is also something that we can do so we don't feel helpless, right? So how we start to take the power away from the narcissist is saying, Walmart, no, I'm not going to be shopping there. Now, I had to go to AutoZone, but AutoZone is another one. I'm going to have to find an alternative. I had to go there. So it's one of those things where just do the best you can, but we do need to be aware of who gave him money. And if possible, do not shop there. I mean, someone will never get another cent from me. Free People, a women's clothing line, my favorite clothing line. I called the corporate office. I said, "Are you recording?" She said, "Yes." I said, "All right, let me tell you what's going on here. You will never see another penny from me." And so, how we use and spend our money is a powerful way of how we can start the resistance for the 47th administration. Okay, so let me pull this up. Now, the thing that's really upsetting, Boomer, is that the big corporations gave to Trump. The list that I'm going to give you is all smaller corporations because the big ones pretty much gave to him. Now, there are some on here that are bigger corporations, but still, I was somewhat surprised. Okay, so Sonic, the fast
Fast
food,
food.
Red
They
Lobster.
gave to Trump.
No,
These
Harris.
are
This is the list to
these.
Harris.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I'm starting the Harris list. I was just sort of reiterating some of the people who were on the Trump list, but this is companies that gave to Harris Walls: Sonic, Red Lobster, Starbucks, Chop House Brewery, Old Chicago Pizza, Bob Evans, Blue Water Grill, Gordon Biersch Brewery, Lipton, Costco, Sky Vodka. And then these are companies that gave to both, but more to Harris Walls. And it wasn't just like 51-49, it was more like 70-30. I checked the percentages. It was way more to Harris Walls. Chipotle, Church's Chicken, Olive Garden, Popeyes, P.F. Chang's. I worked there many years ago. Culver's Creamery, Burger King, Boston Market, Modelo Beer, Corona Beer, Heineken, Dove Chocolates. And this list can be found where I've gotten this information is called goodsuniteus.com.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. A lot of those places that gave money to Harris are places I like. So that's great. That's great. And there are some of the ones too with the Republicans giving to Donald Trump are places I might have gone, but I make a concerted effort not to consume anything from anybody who supports Donald Trump. And people say, well, you're going to do that over politics? Well, it's not about politics. It's about the future. It's about how this country is going to survive. And I'll be fine, but my kids and grandkids are going to have problems. You fuck with my kids and grandkids, there's no going back from that. So I appreciate you bringing that out. I think people need to know that.
Yeah, I mean, if someone voted for Trump, they basically said F you to every woman in this country. That's the way I
Absolutely.
look at it. And if you voted for him after you saw him pantomime a lewd sex act on a microphone days before the election, shame on you. Shame
Yeah.
on you. And at this point, they've told on themselves. If they're a Trumper, they've told you who they are. They've told you who they are. And like, I'm an open-minded, open-hearted person who believes we can heal everything, right? And I am Pollyanna in that way, that I believe we can heal the world. But I also know if someone is in a cult, there's nothing you can do. They're going to believe what they believe, and it's it's like I said, it has to be their own epiphany, their own reckoning that will get them out of it. And there's one other thing that I do want to share. And because I said this when I was here before, and I said it with the first time I was here. I said something's rotten in Denmark. They called this election too fast. I don't believe he won every swing state. And then the second time I was here, so if people haven't watched the old podcasts and they want to, every time I've been here and every time I come, I will always bring facts. And I'm really into facts and evidence. We're not throwing around any just nonsense and conspiracy theories. So the first time I was here, I said something was wrong. They called this election too fast. Something doesn't feel right to me. Then when I came back the second time, I brought a lot of statistics from an election website that is a independent watchdog. And so if you want interested in that, I talked about a lot of election anomalies, like where there were more Trump votes than there were registered voters, where certain precincts, every single vote went for Trump, just like weird election stuff. And then I saw a video this week that I want to share with your audience that is from Tucker Carlson. So most of us will not have seen this video. This interview was actually from before the election. And it's hard to find the actual full clip. And the clip that I found is on Reddit, and I'll give it to you for your viewers to look up for themselves. I transcribed this 45-second clip, and there's an old parable called The Emperor Has No Clothes. And in this parable, the emperor wants to be adorned and adorated so badly, he's a narcissist, that instead of hiring real tailors, he hires criminals and thugs to make his new clothes. And they don't make anything. And they pomp and circumstance him and fluff him up and tell him how great his clothes are and his new cloak. And he proceeds to go out for his parade naked. And it is a child that points to the emperor. And while everyone is saying, oh, we love his new clothes, we love his new clothes. And a child says he's not wearing any clothes. And I feel like that's the energy we're in right now, where we literally have an emperor with no clothes on who is hiring criminals and thieves.
That's a disgusting picture. Thank you. If you're eating while listening to this, please forgive us.
Oh my gosh. So I want to share this video clip of Tucker Carlson interviewing Elon and his son. Now, normally I would not talk about children. Like, I feel like Barron is off limits. He doesn't make himself public. He's not out there. But Elon has brought this child to Congress, has had this child sitting on his shoulder. So he's brought this child out. So I feel like I'm just stating what this child said. Okay. And
yeah, you're not offering an opinion on the kid. You're just repeating what he said.
I'm just repeating what he said. And I want to tell everybody about this parable, like I said, because it really stood out to me, and I feel like your audience will appreciate this. So I also want to say the mother of this child is 4. His name is AXII, and his mother is a Canadian singer named Grimes, and she is very alternative, very progressive, and she has several times on X accused Elon of stealing this child from her and not returning him.
Yeah, let me just clarify this.
Yeah.
This is his son.
This is his son with her. Mm-hmm.
And he basically absconded with the kid and kept control of this kid, in spite of the fact that this female singer doesn't want that to happen. And because he's the richest guy in the world, he somehow pulled that off. So it's not just some kid he pulled out of a crowd. It's his kid.
Yes, this is their child together. I think they might have 2 children now. Correct me if I'm wrong, people can look, but I do believe there could be 2 children that she has with him. They dated over a period of time. There's a lot of pictures of them together on red carpets. And I've seen several interviews with her, and she's very progressive. And like I said, she's like an alternative singer. And she has said exactly what you just stated on X several times, that he was using his power and his money to keep her child from her and not returning him per the custody agreement. So those are accusations that she's made.
Okay.
And Elon has called this child his mini-me. And you will see this child in a lot of pictures from that on Capitol Hill. This child was on his shoulders in some of the pictures when he was walking around the Capitol. And this child is 4 and very, very, very smart. Okay. So this interview took place before the election. Okay. And the child is sitting on Elon's lap, and Tucker Carlson is interviewing the two of them. And Elon says to the child, "Should we help President Trump?" And the son says, "Yeah." And Tucker Carlson says, "You have, you have." And the son says, "If we're in SpaceX, we quietly just do whatever we want." And he starts to like evil laugh.
A 4-year-old.
And then a 4-year-old, yeah, like he laughs like a Disney cartoon character evil laugh, like the like evil laugh like that.
Like he's heard it
And
before from somebody who's taught him to do that. Yeah.
correct. And Tucker says to Elon, "What's your assessment? Did this work? Is he gonna win?" And Tucker looks at the child. The child takes the microphone and says, "Yeah, yeah, it is. They'll never know, never know." And then he evil laughs. And then all three of them evil laugh. And
Wow.
then Elon looks at Tucker and says, "I think it's done." And Tucker says, "It's done." And Elon says, "Yeah, yeah." The son evil laughs and says, "They'll never know," and keeps repeating, "They'll never know." Elon says, "I'm looking at the data as it comes in from every county in Pennsylvania." And the son puts his hand over Elon's mouth as to stop him from giving away some sort of secret. And Tucker says to the son, "Oh, he can tell us." And Elon shakes his head, saying, "I can't tell you." And then they're all evil laughing. And Elon and Tucker exchange this look like it's done.
Wow.
So
That is obviously suspicious. And for the folks that want to see this video, I will take the link and put it in the description of either the audio podcast or the video podcast so you can look at it yourself. I appreciate you doing that. But this is the thing. This is the arrogance. People have come to me and said, well, there was something funny going on, and at the last minute they're going to pull the rug out and Kamala will be president. And my immediate reaction to that is, okay, let's say there is some funny stuff going on. Let's say there was some crimes committed. My problem isn't that there might have been crimes committed because Donald Trump and Elon Musk are involved. Of course, there were some crimes committed. My problem is whether the Democrats and the DOJ will fucking do anything about it. They've spent the last 4 years doing largely nothing, and Donald Trump has not been accountable. I've lost a lot of faith in the Democratic Party because of how little they've taken a situation where they should have won easily, and they blew it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And this is infuriating because this is how brazen it is. And narcissists look at their children as accessories.
Oh, yeah.
And
I was an
so
accessory. I know.
yeah, and same here. And so he has already started to groom this child. This is, like I said, this is a smart kid. He's 4 years old, and he was obviously privy to how SpaceX was involved in whatever they were doing. And how did Elon get a hold of all of the numbers for all the Pennsylvania counties prior to the election? Right? There are a lot of questions here. But what we need to, why I'm bringing this up is that there is a bigger plan here that Elon is implementing. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And they want to crash the American dollar, right? I mentioned this before. They want to crash because he wants cryptocurrency. There's a lot of things that he wants. And what I saw with Trump the other day being so senile, I thought I've underestimated how much Elon is going to control this situation, right? Control the presidency, control Trump. And he is so arrogant that he is bragging about it before the election via his son to Tucker Carlson. So, like I said, we don't watch Tucker Carlson. All of MAGA saw this before the election. They watched Tucker Carlson. They saw
Yeah.
it. And it's completely edited so that, like I said, the only version I could find that had all of that wasn't just the kid laughing, because you can find lots of videos of just the kid laughing, but even that is edited on Reddit, but it's the most unedited of the original clip. But the thing is that the DOJ knew that Trump didn't win in 2016. A woman named Reality Winner leaked it to Mother Jones and then went to federal prison for several years. The election was stolen by 77,000 votes in 3 different swing states, in 3 different counties, and they know the seat in the hacking center in, I think, St. Petersburg. They know the actual hacking seat according to the Mueller report. But the Democratic Party and the Democratic Biden administration did such a bad job of letting the American people know this actual facts, these truths, that what makes us think they're going to do anything now? I don't know why on God's green earth they would have gone along with it then. It really bothers me about President Obama that he knew that and handed the keys over. And if they know something again now and are doing nothing, and we have absolutely no faith, how can we have any faith in them? They let him get reelected. They didn't
Yeah.
charge him. And even in 2022, when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan, all that, them were, I'm like, they're letting insurrectionists get reelected. So I have no faith in them, but I'm going to keep saying it because I feel like we've got to do something to counteract all of this disinformation. At this point, I have more faith in NATO and I have more faith in the German government to do something than I do our own, because their national security is directly threatened by Trump getting in office. Directly.
Right.
Germany is on the other side of Poland, and it's very serious for them.
I just want to say this regarding people will talk about what you're saying about Elon Musk's son and say, well, he's a 4-year-old. They just say crazy shit. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. They listen to everything, they repeat a lot, and they aren't dumb. So to think that that didn't come from somewhere other than his own mind is reasonable to think. I get a lot of people saying, okay, something's going to happen by the 20th. We have the executive order that was put out by Donald Trump, 13484. I've heard somebody read that executive order, and it is compelling. It's ironic that Donald Trump would make that executive order, but it's kind of in line because Donald Trump is known for fucking himself over, tripping over his own feet. And there are people that are convinced that 45 days after the election, there'll be an investigation, and that will be today. When this thing is airing is December 20th. That's 45 days after the fact. And then there's another 45 days to decide what they're going to do about it if they find some fishy things. And all the different agencies are supposed to be investigating this. Now, if that were to happen, that would be absolutely beautiful. But I have a problem, like we were talking about, thinking that they are going to actually do this. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that later today or in the next few days, we find out something was found out, everything's shut down, and we got to do something different. But until I see that, I'm not jumping on board. I kind of feel like when people say this, I worry that it's part of the trauma that they suffered. We saw it with Republicans in 2020. They firmly believed there was a hoax or it was rigged. And I'm afraid that Democrats are getting into that same thing. They're so desperate. They're so terrified. They grab onto anything and they make it something bigger than it is. Now, I'm not saying they're doing that in this case, but don't you get that kind of feeling too? The people are so desperate, they'll grab onto anything.
Absolutely. Yes, and I feel like I can fall into that category at times. It's called the
I
stages
can
of
too.
grief.
Yeah.
And we're in denial. And I absolutely 100% admit I was in complete denial right after the election. I was in complete denial. the thing is that he set up his stealing the election by calling it rigged, and that's what narcissists do. They
Yeah.
accuse everybody else of what they're doing. And I think that that's why I have facts. I don't ever want to come on here and be like with how the MAGA were acting in 2020. Um, but I don't believe he won all swing states. I don't.
It doesn't
I
seem
don't.
reasonable.
It doesn't seem reasonable, especially not with, like I said, the voting anomalies. But I think it goes back to how sad is it that we don't even have faith in our own government to do something about it. Like I said, they knew in 2016 that the Russians had stolen the election, and it's all detailed in the Mueller report, or the Mueller report, excuse me.
Right.
And um, yet the girl who exposed it got sent to federal prison, was sexually assaulted in federal prison, and now has terrible PTSD.
Yeah. It's,
So I don't know what. I would love to believe that they're going to do something. If there is something, right? If there is something, I would love to believe that, but I don't. I don't. Like I said, I'm more apt to believe that around the world right now, Putin has been stealing elections. And in Romania, they're having a brand new election because they couldn't even get it figured out. It was such a
right.
mess, they had to start over. So, um, and I have been reading Reuters and The Guardian and all these other papers, and the EU is fully aware of what Putin is up to. And so that's why I keep wondering if something is going to happen for them to protect themselves, right? So hypothetically speaking, he gets back in office, he gives Putin Ukraine. Ukraine is not going to Putin is not going to stop with Ukraine. He's going to keep going to Poland, and Poland has a border with Germany. So there are bigger implications here for Trump getting back in office that have national security implications all through Europe. And
Absolutely.
I mentioned this when I was here before. Um, I don't know what's going to happen. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know. I've heard people say the kind of things you're saying too. Like I said, but I think what's important, what we can do is keep bringing out facts. That's why I'm bringing the this video for you guys to see, and you can make your own assessment, and we can talk about it so that we can at least get some facts out there to the collective.
Well, that's one of the things that concerns me the most. If there were some issues in this election, and the Democrats and the DOJ does nothing about it. We looked at all the trials and such, and nobody on the federal level did anything to hold Donald Trump accountable. The only time he was convicted was in the state of New York. And now Georgia is going by the wayside because they
Yeah.
disqualified Fani Willis for her affair. And I have my problems with Fani Willis as well as Donald Trump and all this. But here's the thing that concerns me the most. And it's something I've said before. If the Democrats have found some things that were shady that they could contest and they could bring up and press, and they don't, I have a feeling that we have to take a look at this situation and realize people like you and me and people listening to this podcast, we're on our fucking own. We really are.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why I've said this isn't a battle between Democrats and Republicans. It's us versus them. And I'm talking about Democrats and Republicans because they're both working against us. And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that there's some secret thing that the Democrats are doing. They're just, and excuse my language, but I tend to use this a lot. It's just the fact that, to steal Chrissy Teigen's line, the Democrats are pussy ass bitches. They don't do anything. And they got to be
Yeah.
more aggressive here if they actually want to fight against something that's trying to take over our country.
It is so infuriating that they agreed to like work with that Department of Government Efficiency, like dodgy is basically what it is, because it is
Doge, yeah.
dodgy, Doge or whatever. I mean, that is so that Elon and Viva can steal money from Social Security and Medi-Cal. And the fact that the Democrats agreed to work with them on that, I called Ted Lieu. Okay, so that's my congressman. And I talked about this when I was here before. We have to call our congressmen and senators. It does not matter if they are blue or red. It does not
No,
matter. You have to
does
call,
not.
and what you talk about is the issues that are important to you. And so I called Ted Lieu's office and said, I'm disgusted that you're going along with this. And I cannot believe you're not fighting back. How dare you even agree to even come to the table to talk about taking money away from Social Security and or Medicare? I was like, that shouldn't even be on the table. We should not even be having that conversation or willing to have that conversation.
Right.
And so it is infuriating. They roll over every time. Um, and even in the disinformation wars, Hakeem Jeffries was on TV. There were certain people that were on TV like every once in a while. No, Hakeem Jeffries, Dan Goldman, Jasmine Crockett, Eric Swalwell, they need to be on TV Ted Lieu, every single day, day in, day out, saying this is what's true. This is what's not true. This is the reality. This is not the reality. And they did a very bad job. They did a very, very bad job. I felt Kamala and Tim did the absolute best they could, but our supporting team, I feel the supporting team is just weak. And the only thing I know that we can do is call them. And yes, we are on our own, which is why I'm saying we create our own reality and nobody dictates whether you live your best life, only you. And we need community. You have to be able to know who in your neighborhood is of like mind and has your back.
Now we're talking to Kristen. She's out in California, former TV producer, and now she's in a more spiritual type mode with healing and such. And it's very interesting to talk to her because, in spite of what I look like, I'm in line with a lot of things she says, um, based on my experience. Now, she said we're in kind of a difficult time because we're in the unknown. And I think people's greatest fear is those things they don't know, the anticipation of what might happen. And here's the thing I've learned, and see if I'm onto something here or if I'm just on something. Um, I've learned that to not worry about the unknown, assume that things are going to go well in the end. You might have some bumps, you might have some hurdles, you might have some trials and tribulations, but it will end up going the right way. And people will say to me, well, that's not true because this happened to me and it went horribly wrong. My theory on this is that if you're worried about something happening and you panic and you start doing a million things, try to fix it ahead of time, that's where the mess comes. That's where the problems come in. If you just trust the process, do what you're supposed to do, keep your head about you, you will come out the other side into the sunshine. Does that make any sense? Or is that just
Oh,
me making up shit?
no, absolutely. When I'm in reactive mode, that actually is not in my best interest, right? If you're just
No,
constantly reacting, 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 and that's what Trump and narcissists want. They want us to constantly be reacting and constantly be in despair. And um, that's, that's the tool of a fascist authoritarian regime, wear you down. And like I said, I've been a negative Nelly and I've also learned to be positive. I've lived my life both ways. Guess which one's better?
yeah, not hard to guess.
Yeah, guess which one's better? Um, we are in a very uncomfortable energy right now because we are in an unknown, right? We don't know how awful this administration is going to be, whether it's just going to be completely inept and they get nothing done, which is absolutely a possibility. That is
Absolutely.
very possible. This last Congress in the last 2 years, I was reading it today, they passed nothing,
Yeah,
nothing. So, um, but being in the catastrophic thinking is a trauma response. and it dysregulates your nervous system, and it can actually make you sick. So, a dysregulated nervous system is a cause and a factor in chronic illness.
Right.
And so, there are many different reasons why what you were saying, where you want to be able to go with the flow. I always want to assume that everything always works out for me. And sometimes it doesn't look the way we thought. How many
Right.
times have you heard of someone who got fired and that was the best thing that ever happened to them? They go on to start their own business or get an even better job. So, but if you're looking at life like everything always works out for me, even when life happens, because life will happen, you can handle it a lot better instead of reacting from fear, right? So I look at, the power of positive thinking, or just having this sort of general like undercurrent that everything always works out for me. Out of this situation, only good will come. And I'm going to keep that regardless of what he does as president, right? And I refuse to let a narcissist control my life. I'm not going to let him toss me around like he did back in 2016. Because I have to admit, I did let him do that back then. And I'm not doing that this time around.
Well, when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I had a narcissist father, and I had no choice but to have him control my life. And I know what that is. I know what the outcome is. I also know the trajectory and the arc of a narcissist, too. They never survive. They're on the uptrend, they hit the top, and then the crash starts. And they ultimately always crash, and they're always a failure. And that's what's going to happen to Donald Trump. It's taking longer than I thought it might. I thought November 5th would be the crashing point, but fuck me, I was wrong. And so um, the key to narcissism, they're going to crash. You can't stop them from crashing. You can't change them. The only thing you can do is protect yourself from becoming collateral damage in that crash. And that's kind of where we are right now. We've got to protect ourselves so we don't go down with the fucking ship.
Yeah. And whatever that looks like for you, you need to do that, right? And that
Yeah.
looks different for different people. Um, but this is going to end badly. I think we can all agree on that, right? We don't know exactly what the train wreck is going to look like, but this is going to end badly. His administration is not going to be successful. It's only how bad is it going to be? Are we going to have another pandemic? Are they going to crash the economy? And that's why I keep saying this, that we need to understand that Elmo and that's what I call Elon. Just
Yeah.
that's my nickname
No.
for him. Um, whether it would Trump calls him Leon, right? Trump calls him Leon. What we need to understand is Leon, Peter Thiel, these guys want to crash the economy. That's what they want. They want red lines. They want to be responsible for a depression. That will actually give them joy because they're narcissists too. Okay. And then if they can crash out the American economy, they can crash out the American dollar, they can get their cryptocurrency and really be in control of all the money. And they have bigger plans and they need everybody to comply. And we're not going to. We're
No,
not
we're
going
not
to.
going to comply. And here's the
Yeah.
thing, I said this about Donald Trump in his first years as president. As much as he has all these horrific things he wants to do, the one thing he has going against him that Joe Biden doesn't, he's entering an arena that is much bigger than him. He's never been in that arena before, except when he was president first time, and it failed on him horribly. In order to get things done in the government, you've got to understand how the game is played and be willing to play that game. That's why Joe Biden was so successful. He'd been in the Senate for 40 years. He knew how to play the game. Donald Trump does not know how to play the game. And even if he did, he refuses to play by the rules. He thinks everybody should just do what he says. And that's just not going to happen. He was incompetent in the first 4 years. He accomplished little except tax credit for wealthy people. And I think going into this, people are terrified about all the horrific things he might do. But he's too busy fucking arguing with Democrats and the media and such. Over and above that, he doesn't know what he's doing. And you look at the clowns that he's putting in his cabinet, they don't understand how the game is played either. Pete Hegseth or Elon Musk. Smart as they may think they are, they don't know how the system runs. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be like walking through mud for them. And that's the good news of it.
Yeah, the federal government is so big and the bureaucracy is so deep, it's very hard to get in there and just start changing everything. Mick Mulvaney, who was briefly the press secretary during the Trump administration. I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast. Mick Mulvaney, he was the one that when they were gonna when he had that perfect call with Zelensky, he said, "Get over
Right.
it." Right when they did the quid pro quo, he said, "Get over it," and then he got fired. When Elon and Vivek started talking about all the changes they wanted to make, I saw an interview with him where he said, "Good luck." He said they don't understand how the federal government works. None of that's going to happen. So that there, it's so deeply layered with how the bureaucracy of the federal government works, that it is very hard to change. My concern is everyone is acquiescing to him. Everybody. And that's why I say we can't comply. We have to call our congressmen and senators. We have to speak up for the issues that are important to us. We need to boycott the companies that gave Trump money and support the ones that gave money to Harris Walls. And the thing is that our checks and balances are very compromised right now because the Republicans have bent the knee to him and are all so deeply compromised with cheating on their wives or whatever secret he's got on them. The
Right.
Democrats are unfortunately are very weak and we can't count on them, which is just infuriating in and of itself. But it's the courts and this and the Supreme Court and the judges. He has got everything so deeply compromised. My concern is they just ramrod everything through, and it's just an absolute shit show, for lack of a better word. Because they don't care about norms and regulations. They want to deregulate everything. Um, they have idiots running departments, right? Where the Senate's only going to be able to keep out a couple of these horrible appointments. They will not be able to stop all of them. And they might have really only been able to stop Matt Gaetz or whatever. So on one hand, I know it's very hard to make the changes they want to make, but on the other hand, he has so deeply embedded compromised and willing people into the system that we'll just have to see how these opposing forces what actually happens.
What do you think about this premise? I've talked about it before, and other people have kind of agreed. Donald Trump's value to the Republican Party ended on November 5th when he won the election. That's what they needed him for, to win that election and to help get the Republicans in the House and the Senate. At this point, he has the ability, if he gets done what he wants to get done, to crash the economy. Now, he may not give a shit about that. Elon may not give a shit about that, but Republicans in the House and the Senate have to get reelected in 2026 and 2028. It's my contention that once he is inaugurated, he becomes a liability more than an asset. He's always been an asset to them because he brought something to the table. He can't get reelected. He can do nothing but embarrass and cause problems for the Republican Party. I think at that point, they're going to be looking for ways to get him the fuck out of there. 25th Amendment, Republicans could even impeach him for something. They could impeach him for anything, really, because there's so many things that they could attack. Or worse than that, the Republicans are a violent party. Who knows what fucking thing they would stop at? So, do you get that sense too that Donald Trump has become kind of useless after he's actually inaugurated?
Yes, and from the news conference that I saw him from the other day, he is so out of it. They're going to be able to just cast him aside and do what they want. He was so diminished, so so the cognitive decline was so bad. His vocabulary is like 100 words. I
Yeah.
don't even want to say he has a fourth grade vocabulary because your 4-year-old daughter or granddaughter probably has a better vocabulary than he does. He was slimy. He was hunched over. He is going to fall into dementia, whatever is going on with him, it is happening so fast that I think Elon is going to be calling the shots. As frightening as that is,
The thing about Elon, though, is he can't call the shots unless Donald Trump allows him or
I
the
think
people
that's
in
how
Congress.
diminished he is. That's what I'm
Yeah. No,
saying. I
well, the
think
thing about
that's
it is,
how, like he's, like, to me, it looks like he's going to be in a wheelchair soon. Like that's how bad it was.
but do you think the Republicans in the House and the Senate really want to appeal to Elon Musk? Elon Musk doesn't have a real job. He's in a department that doesn't really exist. It's outside government. For all intents and purposes, he's a glorified lobbyist. It's not a matter of if he has power. It's a matter of if the Republicans and the Democrats, for that matter, give him power or give him consideration when he makes suggestions. The idea that a Democrat would even listen to that is troubling, like you said with Ted Lieu.
Yeah.
But Elon Musk doesn't have any power unless it's handed to him, and it has to be handed to him by Donald Trump and or the Republican Congress. From what
And I
we're
think they
seeing now,
probably will. They will. I
but
know.
here's a guy that took Twitter, one of the most popular platforms in the world, and took it from 44 million down to 10 million. Took Tesla, and it's crashing in the stock market. This guy, like Donald Trump, is an absolute failure, and this is who they jump on board with. It's fucking amazing.
The Republican Party is so spineless. They are so deeply compromised. That's been Donald Trump's MO for a long time, is to get dirt on people. And he would purposefully, get dirt on people and then blackmail them, get them to do whatever he wants. I believe that's a lot what's going on with the Republican Party, is that they are compromised in terms of who they've taken money from. They're compromised in terms of cheating on their wives. He knows all of their secrets, and they're also scared. They're scared if he sicks the mob on them, right? The Mitt Romney was spending an astronomical amount of money on security for his family after he got targeted by Trump.
Yeah.
So I think they are spineless. I think they will roll over. I don't have any faith in them whatsoever. And the thing that I'm also concerned about is if and when someone like Elon has access to our voting, the midterms and voting won't matter. We will just have voting like they have in Russia, which is you can go ahead and vote, but we know who's going to win. That's one of my big concerns, is that we will not be able to vote our way out of this. Is that once they've gotten in there so deeply embedded into the system and into the voting machines and changing and gerrymandering and all of the ways that they have controlled the electoral map, is that we won't be able to get ourselves out of it. That's my big concern.
Now, of course, if they try to pull something like that, you make a good point. Some people say, well, they won't even have a midterm election. They're going to have a midterm election. They have to by way of the Constitution. But if they've infiltrated and tainted the 2024 election, clearly they can do the same thing in 2026. If this starts happening, we know the Trump-a-fucks will be happy because they're dumbass people who will buy into anything. But there's a large percentage of this country um, that aren't going to like it. They're going to realize what it is. And I'm concerned that it could be some kind of revolt. And I don't know what that looks like, but we're seeing kind of a revolt now. 60% of the people walking away from CNN, 50% of the people walking away from MSNBC, tons of people walking away from Walmart. We've got United Health and that shooting, and everybody
Yeah, I was just
enthusiastic.
about to say,
And they're
Luigi.
and the stock market is dropping. So people are
Yeah,
feeling that pressure, and they are
yeah.
on the verge of a revolt. And I think people understand that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Luigi Mangione because a he is a catalyst and a symbol for what's happening. Um, and today was watching NYPD parading him around, and they had all these pictures of him. Well, first of all, what happened to innocent before proven guilty? I mean, they did this like
Right.
massive perp walk with him, but they actually only perpetuated this whole folklore of him being a folk hero. Here they had all this NYPD around him, and it was only just creating a bigger persona for like pop culture. I think it's going to be really hard for them to get a conviction on him the way they want to. I think if he has good lawyers, he could easily just be in some sort of, institute for the criminally insane. They're going to have a hard time. The public perception of what he did is congratulatory. People congratulate him. They are happy. It's whether you agree with that or not, what I've seen on social media is what he wanted to accomplish, right? He wanted to create some sort of dialogue. He wanted to create this upheaval. He accomplished what he was set out to do, to actually create a dialogue about this.
Well, that's the interesting thing. And we find out that United Health is denying 32% of its claims. And then we also find out they're rejecting another 10%. So they're essentially denying 42% of their claims.
Mm-hmm.
That information has been out there for a while. Why have we not heard it before now? The media didn't bring it to us. United Health certainly didn't bring it to us. No. And people will say, well, that's barbaric, and there's a better way to bring this information and cause people to be concerned about a serious problem in this country. Well, apparently not. This wasn't brought out until Luigi goes and shoots his CEO. Now, I'm not for shooting CEOs. That's not the way to do it. But it seems like this is the only way it gets attention. And when people see that and become frustrated by that, that could perpetuate more of these kinds of acts. And hopefully CEOs and big companies are realizing that they're on the precipice of something very dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, violence is never the answer. And I don't condone violence in any way, but he was like idolizing like the Unabomber, like Ted Kaczynski, and
he's got some problems too.
Right. And these men, even beyond in their, complete insanity and going about things the absolute wrong way, sparked a conversation. We know who the Unabomber still is, right? We remember him, even though he's been in jail or prison for all of these years. Like I said, we're not condoning him in any way, but I am acknowledging what this has done to the landscape and the conversation about healthcare and about the elite and how the masses are treated. And everyone has a story where someone in their family had a medical issue and was denied coverage or spent a lot of money for their own healthcare. I think everyone has someone in their life that they've known that has gone through cancer treatment, or someone who's had to deal with the insurance system. The thing that I find interesting, and like I said, we're just trying to have a conversation here, is I saw all of these CEOs and all this talk about how terrified they must be that there has been gun violence. And I'm thinking, we don't talk about all the kids in school, going to school every day, that are facing gun violence and the trauma and the lifelong scars that our kids are facing because of gun violence. We just had another school shooting. We just had one. All the signs were there, by the way, for this child and what was going on. It was on social media. All the signs were there, completely missed. And then this is unfortunate, but we want to hone in on, oh gosh, how can we make CEOs safe? And oh, well, Brian had a family and children. Yes, he had a family and he had children. And that is terrible that they don't have a father. And he is also responsible for a lot of children not having a father.
Well, that's the exact point. People say you're animals because you're supporting the shooting of Brian Thompson. I don't support the shooting of Brian Thompson.
Not in any way. No.
But I'm not going to cry for him until they cry for the thousands of elderly folks, the thousands of children, the thousands of family members that have died because they chose the bottom line over humanity. Fuck them. You got karma working here. You hurt people, you're going to get hurt.
And we have all of these kids facing gun violence.
Right.
Every kid in America has been traumatized by gun violence in our public school system and even in our private schools. And so for everyone to be all outraged that a CEO was shot, I would like to see the same outrage for the children and the teachers and the victims of gun violence in our schools. And yeah.
As a producer, somebody who produces things, comes up with ideas and ways to produce things. I saw something on TikTok recently, and it was just one TikTok, and it was about somebody who was denied a claim for, it was for, God, I can't remember what it was for. It was about a child who needed an arm attached, a mechanical arm, and they needed it for health reasons and for functional reasons, and they were turned down. I thought, if I was going to do a TikTok or YouTube short form type of thing, maybe I would not put my face on it, not put my voice on it, but do nothing but time after time put the story of somebody who was denied, to keep that narrative going. Okay, this person was denied for this, and just keep them coming and keep them coming. And that would be a way that would be nonviolent, but to keep it in the forefront of people's minds. Now, I don't know if I have the wherewithal to do something like that. Somebody has to do some research, get some videos, and put it together. But I think that's the kind of thing we need to do. We need to keep telling the stories, the sad, sad stories of these people who are being denied and they're losing their lives, or their lives have become diminished because healthcare companies want a better bottom line.
And I love that idea. And that's why we're having these conversations and talking about things that are uncomfortable to talk about. Yes, it is uncomfortable to talk about the karma that Brian Simpson accrued in his life by his actions as a CEO. These are uncomfortable conversations. I actually, as a television producer, interviewed one of the leading robotics engineers in Chicago. He makes all of those arms, like then the legs and the prosthetics. And an arm can be $50,000. And the robotics that are so complex now because the technology has come so far, so many people are crowdsourcing those prosthetics, right?
Right.
One thing that we have to keep in mind too, that I didn't realize until a friend of mine was diagnosed with cancer, is that chemotherapy for some insurance is considered an experimental treatment and can be denied.
Jesus Christ.
And we think of that, right, as the gold standard of how cancer is treated, but yet it's still considered experimental. And so your insurance can still deny your cancer treatment, and then people are forced to have GoFundMe's and crowdsource their own survival. And that's what's absolutely infuriating about Republicans wanting to take away these protections from Americans, when we should be literally having the exact opposite conversation about how we expand these insurances and these protections. The other thing is deductibles. I was just talking to a client who's dealing with some health issues, and she was, having to face the cost of what January is going to bring for her, right? She's gone through all of her deductibles and now she's got to start over. And
Right.
so her out-of-pocket costs to keep her life going are astronomical. And that's even in the state of California. And somehow, some way, Democrats won the California Senate, which is, we'll have to see what happens there, but that can be an utter disaster. But there are treatments that we think of that are no-brainers, right? That of course the insurance would approve, like getting you a prosthetic limb, having chemo for your cancer, and that is denied. That is denied. Yeah.
Well, people have to understand, when they're selling you insurance, they say, we're here to protect you. We're going to take care of you. So you pay these exorbitant premiums, you pay the exorbitant co-pays or deductibles. And then when you make a claim, I don't know this for a fact, but if you're in business, it makes sense. First thing they do when they make a claim, the first thing they do, I'm guessing, is look for loopholes to find a way to deny it. That's the first and foremost thing. That's the profit margin they gain by not covering something. And then when they can't find something, or they're a little less unethical than, say, United Health, then they will cover it. So when you buy an insurance premium, you're basically fucking gambling that either your company is decent and humane, or just can't find a loophole to cut you out. Because if that loophole is there, I had a situation when my son was very young. I worked with a company, a government agency, and I had certain health care. Okay. When the time to come up to switch the health care, the same company, but a different name to that particular program was the only thing that was available. So I had to switch from that to this same company, but a new name. My son was getting tubes put in his ears. And it started out that he was diagnosed, that he had tubes in his ears. And then when the switch was made, because I had to, it was that time of year, they came back to me and said, that was a pre-existing thing. We're not going to cover that. Now, normal people would just sit back and go, oh, fuck, I got screwed again. But I tend to be an asshole. And I worked for the Minneapolis Public Schools at that point. And I also worked for the radio station that was owned by the Minneapolis Public Schools. So I got him on the phone and I said, listen, you know, this is bullshit. Same thing I've had for 20 years. And you're trying to pull this game. Here's what I'm going to do. I work at the radio station. I work for the Minneapolis Public Schools. There is a school meeting, a school get together, and it's broadcast on KBEM. I'm going to take my 5 minutes and tell this fucking story and scare the shit out of everybody in this place because they know they could be in that same situation. And the Minneapolis Public Schools, who is a big fucking customer of yours, is going to have to address this issue. So that's what's going to happen unless you do what's right. And of course they said, oh yeah, I think we can do what's right. But I should not have to do that to get the protection I've been paying for fucking 20 years. And that is just a minor thing that I went through that wasn't as traumatic as what people go through. But people go through this every day for serious illnesses, for life-threatening illnesses. And it's absolutely bullshit that you have to do it.
Oh, you have to be your own advocate. If you're not going to be
Absolutely.
your own advocate, they will be happy to steamroll you. And a lot of people don't realize that. They have never been sick or they haven't had an insurance claim. And so they just, don't know that if you don't become an advocate for yourself, it's not going to happen.
But people
Yeah,
don't have the resources to do that. They don't work at a
no,
radio station. They don't work for
nope.
a big public organization.
But they don't
That's
even
why
realize they can call. They don't realize. That's why I keep telling everybody, get on the phone and call. Call your representative. If your insurance claim has been denied, you need to call and ask for a review. You can call your doctor and ask for additional paperwork, and the doctor can insist upon it. There are things that you can do, but yes, you will have to be your own advocate. Also, you have to realize sometimes a denial happens because paperwork wasn't filled out correctly by the doctor. That happened to my aunt. And we had to get that paperwork filled out correctly. And it was because the doctor's office didn't fill it out right. The insurance claim got denied. So you do have to become your own investigator, your own advocate. And I just cannot stress this enough. As we move forward into this administration, you will need to do this on every level. If you have any government program or any government assistance, your insurance company, because the mentality of the administration will be to protect the corporation, not you. So you have to advocate for yourself.
right. Well, if I was in a situation where my kid or my granddaughter or grandson or whatever was in a life-threatening situation, you can bet I would go to them and say, listen, you better fucking do this or else. And they'll say, or else what? And I can say, well, I have 430,000 people following me on TikTok, and I guarantee you this will go viral if I do it. But not everybody can do that. That's why I'm saying we need to build some platforms where people can go and pull their situations together and build that audience so everybody has access to saying, I can talk loud and cause you trouble. Now you better do it. That's why I'm saying if we have a TikTok where people are getting denied and everybody just keeps funneling in there, all they have to do is, well, I've got access to healthcare exposed. I'm going on there tomorrow. Then they're going to think twice about doing something. And we could do it with all kinds of areas, all kinds of corporations. It's just a matter of getting it
Yeah.
done and maintaining it.
And, historically, calling corporations out does work. It
Yeah.
does.
Oh, it does. It does.
When when the crowd gets riled up, things do change. And so I like your idea. And like I said, that's why I want to come on this podcast and talk about how we build community, how we have to stand up for ourselves, how we have to have our voices heard, whether you have a big social media platform or not. Us having this conversation and just being a part of this community is where we have to start, because we are so outnumbered with the number of influencers, with the number of just Sinclair Group, how all of the different conservative stations, how we've lost MSNBC and CNN at this point. It is up to us, and we have to be able to find the platforms and have sometimes uncomfortable conversations so that we, like I said, we have to resist. We cannot acquiesce. We have to rise up some way. And I don't want anyone to think their voice doesn't matter. Every voice, just like every vote, does count.
So, well, I think I was on a live. TJ the plumber was on there with me, and he said, we got to put these motherfuckers on blast. And that's a less sophisticated way to put it, which I appreciate. But we do. One of the things I've said is we've got to block everything they do, just like the Republicans did. We've got to take a page from their book and drown them in the narrative, much like they did to us. They're in a different situation. They have the power. They're going to get blamed for everything, but we got to make sure we keep saying it loud and dominate the narrative, dominate the public voice, so they can't lie. I mean, that's all they did is lie about Joe Biden, and that's how they won. So if that's how they won, we have to maybe take a page from their book and do it back to them and be loud. And I know Democrats aren't known for doing it. I'm happy to do it. I'm excited about the prospect of tearing their shit down every chance I get, but we need a lot of voices doing this.
Absolutely. And I don't have all the answers. I like the ideas you're suggesting. One way to start to get those stories would be Reddit, to start a Reddit thread of asking people to put their denial stories in there. That would be one way
Yeah,
to start
that'd be a good
to,
idea.
and we have to start looking at alternative platforms, because after January 1st, a lot of terms of service are changing. And like my biggest platform is Facebook. And I have stopped posting because I'm not willing to make Mark Zuckerberg money after he just went down and kissed the ring. And
No,
he's culpable in what happened in 2016, that he let all the misinformation run wild on Facebook. So, and I'm deleted the majority of my tweets on Twitter, and I'm not sure where to go with my YouTube. Like I said, my social medias are all sort of in flux right now, because I want to be clear about who I'm supporting, right?
right.
And what do you think is going to happen with TikTok? Do you think they're going to want to, are they going to shut it down, or how do we think that's going to play out
I don't
next?
think they're going to shut it down because there's too many people involved, too much money in,
Yeah.
in, in commerce there. There's too much money on the table for the Republicans or the Democrats to say, just shut it down. They're trying to ploy to get TikTok to do something they want. It's just a Donald Trump move. It's
Yeah.
it's threatening. They aren't going to do it. But I found what happened was kind of interesting. They went to TikTok appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found it in their ability to expedite it, which I thought was really interesting. They never found the time to expedite anything having to do with Donald Trump. They took their time, they wasted time, but they expedited this. And they're going to hear arguments on January 10th. And then at that point, they'll probably say, we're going to consider this. We'll put it on pause until we come back. And like Eric said yesterday, if they do that, that tells me that they're not going to shut down TikTok.
Yeah.
Donald Trump met with the CEO. And as I told people, Donald Trump, some of the Republicans are now getting a little weirded out about this because there's a lot of commerce, billions of dollars of commerce that come through TikTok. Donald Trump knows a guy that owns 60% of fucking TikTok for that matter. And so Donald Trump probably sat down with the CEO and said, listen, man, I like TikTok. I don't want to see anything happen to it. And maybe I could help if I could just get a little taste. And I'm sure the Republicans are in that mode too. I don't think they're going to shut down TikTok. You're going to alienate 170 million people. That makes no sense. You're going to cost all these corporations all this money and all these taxes. That's just fucking stupid. And if you want to talk about people infiltrating with foreign influence in this country, look at Mark Zuckerberg, that piece of shit. Look at Elon Musk, that piece of shit. Now they are living in America, but they're far more dangerous than anything you'll find on TikTok.
Yeah. And after January 1st, the terms of service on both of those platforms, which will include Threads and Instagram, they own all of your content and can do with it what they want. And my concern is, especially with Elon, is how that will be weaponized, right? And Blue Sky, I joined, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. I don't. Have you joined Blue Sky?
I have joined Blue Sky, and the idea to put videos up that are under a minute is kind of restrictive to me. But
Yeah.
I took the advice of somebody who's another creator on TikTok, and I am on Blue Sky because a lot of people ask me to. So all I do is copy the link to my YouTube and I put it up in Blue Sky. That's all I do.
Okay. Okay, I'll have to follow you on there. I'm Kristen Healer at Blue Sky. You can follow me and say hello, but I'm still figuring it out. Um, the thing that I like about Blue Sky that Twitter and Facebook are doing is they are suppressing when you put a link on there, right? Because they don't want you leaving their platform. You know, they want all the money for themselves. And I did see the lady that runs Blue Sky, her name's escaping me right now, that they don't suppress links. They want you to be able to promote whatever you've got going. So there is no suppression in Blue Sky the way that Meta and X have been doing it. Because if you put a link on X and you don't have a premium account, they will completely suppress that tweet.
Yeah, yeah, they will. And you know, the thing about it is Facebook suspended my account, my Rational Boomer account. And in doing so, they suspended my Instagram account and my Threads account. And those were always kind of secondary platforms for me. I didn't monetize anything there. I just put whatever I put on TikTok. But that's the ironic thing. I get suspended on Facebook and Instagram for the same things I put on TikTok and YouTube. For me, the safest platform is YouTube. It takes a little while to get traction, but you can get it if you're diligent about it and you keep posting on it. But I'm done with Facebook. Somebody said, well, what if they take you off suspension and you can come back? I'm not going back to Facebook. I don't trust Zuckerberg. I don't need Facebook or Instagram. I'm just not doing it anymore. I won't go back there.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same place. I've been deleting old content. Like, you know, when they have the memories show up on Facebook, I delete. They're cringy anyway, all those old memories, but I
Yeah.
delete all that. I've been just sort of methodically going through. So if you go into any of my social medias, you're like, why hasn't she been posting? I had been posting. It's just when they started to all kowtow to Trump and want to own all of our content, I don't want to be making money for these jerks that are destroying our democracy and want to tear down our country. And I'm not going to make content for them. So I hope that there's a new I keep thinking there's got to be a new platform that emerges, and maybe Blue Sky will build out. When Twitter first was a thing. You couldn't retweet. You couldn't edit a tweet. There were so many limitations on it, like Blue Sky
Yeah.
has right now, and so they built it out. So hopefully that's what happens with Blue Sky. But I think that's part of the problem is the pro-democracy voices are getting suppressed and have been getting suppressed because the big corporations benefit by having someone like Donald Trump in office. They don't benefit from having Harris Walz in office. I
Right.
guarantee there's some sort of, give me money and you don't have to pay a tariff. There's some way that he thinks he's going to make money off of tariffs, right? Some way, and that's the whole tariff game is that there's going to be something he skims off the top, or pay him and then you don't pay the tariff. So there's that's why I was saying it was really disappointing when I looked at the big corporations and they gave their money to him. And it was just so infuriating that they're, you know, they want to have record profits and not care about their consumers or their country. It's like amoral and un-American.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Kristen, we're going to wrap things up. We've gone to the point where we always go with listeners and guests. Tell people where they can find you. I will tell you, you're at Kristen Healer on Blue Sky.
This
I
guy.
just followed you, so you've got one more follower, and you should check out Kristen Healer on Blue Sky as well. Uh, let's show her what the Rational Boomer podcast can do. Get her another 20 on there. Doesn't cost you fucking anything. Get her another
Thank
100. It doesn't matter.
you. Thank
Let's
you.
kick this up a notch. So, but they can also find you on YouTube as well, correct?
Yeah, you can find me. If you follow me on Kristen Healer, you can get all the links from there, from the Blue Sky. The link to my website and everything is there. Like I said, my social medias are a little in flux right now, because of what's going on, but I'm going to be active on Blue Sky. I just joined. And like I said, follow me there and then you can find all my links there.
All right, sounds perfect. Well, Kristen, thank you very much. Be sure to hurry back and be on the show. I know the people love hearing from you. Check the comments in YouTube because they'll no doubt have questions for you. Uh, but you're welcome back anytime, and the sooner the better.
Thank you so much for having me and lots of love to everybody.
For those of you listening, thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.